Hi, everybody. I'll give you just a minute to get signed on here with me. I know some of you are planning on joining me live. And today what we're going to chat about is looking down. So one of the things that happens, we just came back. I know a lot of you have been following along with some of our stories in our social media the last few weeks, but Jesse and I just came back from the NRHA Futurity. And one of the things that always happens when we're at the Futurity, or even when we're at a weekend reining, is we will have riders saying, you were looking down, or so-and-so is looking down, and you always tell me that I have to look up. And I did take a quick video of $1 Million rider, Dwayne Latimer, who is a phenomenal rider and qualified all three of the horses that he had brought to the Futurity to the level 4 finals, which speaks to obviously his skill level. And he was in a lot of his pattern, he was looking down. And I did have that question at the Futurity, and I thought, let's turn this into a quick live for everybody and just talk a little bit about looking down and what it does to our equitation and why some riders can get away with it more than others, because that's kind of what this question that's kind of what the answer to this question comes down to, is looking down for $1 Million rider Dwayne Latimer is a little different than looking down as, let's say, a green reiner or a rookie reiner. So first of all, let's think about what the most important part of our equitation is. And the most important piece when you think about your body in terms of your ability to influence the horse is always your seat. So if your seat's not in the right position, that's the part that you always want to go to first. If there's anything that isn't working with your riding or with your maneuver, you always want to check in with your seat first. Everything else comes after that. Okay, so your seat is what keeps you balanced on the horse. It's what has the most weight and the most surface area to influence the horse, positively or negatively. The seat, I can't tell you enough, the seat is always the most important piece. So what happens in an upper level rider, a very elite rider, in this case, we're talking about Dwayne Latimer. Dwayne, if you end up watching this, I'm sorry for calling you out, but well, in this case, what we're watching is a very upper level rider who has a lot of independence of the seat. Okay, so Dwayne, and I don't know what his background is, but you see this in a lot of very upper level, very elite riders, where they have control, so much control over each part of their body that what one part of the body is doing doesn't influence what another part of the body is doing when they're on the horse. So that's something that we're always trying to work on, always throughout our entire riding career. We're always trying to work on developing the independence of each body part. So what happens with looking down with most riders, especially when we first start riding, is we don't have a lot of independence of the seat. We have everything feels connected. And a really good example for that is if you think about if you were to be sitting in your saddle and you were to lift your right leg up, okay? Usually what happens, and you might even do it as you're sitting watching or as you're standing watching, if you lift your right leg up, your left leg wants to straighten out and push down harder, okay? Obviously, if you're standing on 2 feet, that's what has to happen. You lift your right leg and your weight shifts over a little bit more to the left. The same thing happens when we're in the saddle. If I'm lifting my right leg, let's say I'm going to apply my right leg on my horse's rib cage, my left leg wants to push to the outside and actually usually comes off the horse, okay? As a rider who spends a lot of time developing the independence of my seat and the independence of all my body parts, I can lift my right leg and apply it on the horse's side without my left leg straightening out. Okay, that's just a little tiny example for you to kind of understand how this works. So in terms of looking down and what happens to the seat, for people that are just starting out, for people that have not spent a lot of time developing their body position, what commonly we see is the hip, rather than the hip and the pelvis being rocked under, we see where maybe the hip is straight, or maybe where there's a little bit of anterior tilt to the pelvis. So I'll just drop back here for a second, see if I can show you this. So, squeeze back. Sorry, I tried this before, and on Facebook, it just zooms in a little bit more. Okay, so if I'm on the horse's back and I am sitting with my pelvis like this, so I've got just a little bit of anterior tilt here, that's already creating this position with my head. So I'm already looking down. I'm already looking kind of down towards the horse's ears or down towards the ground. And having that anterior tilt, having that closed pelvic position, limits my ability to influence my horse. So what I'm asking the horse to do is this motion, and yet what my hip is doing is kind of stuck back here. What I want to do with my hip position is open and close to match what the horse is doing, okay? Or sit straight here with my pelvis and allow my pelvis to come forward. So when we think back to looking down, first of all, if I've got a closed pelvis position, it's already making me look down. It's already bringing my shoulders ahead of my hips. And whatever happens with my body also happens to the horse. It also influences my horse. So if I'm sitting tipped forward with my shoulders forward, that's going to make my horse carry more of their weight on the front end. And that's never what I want. Okay? If I rock my pelvis under so that it's tilted up, not only does that encourage my chest to open and my shoulders to come back, but it also encourages my head to come up. And then obviously that's going to encourage, it's going to give space for the horse to feel like they can lift their shoulders up and they can stay traveling where they're either even and propelling themselves with the back end, or even with the front end lifted up. So again, let's go back to this idea of looking down and thinking about Dwayne Latimer. So why can Dwayne Latimer get away with looking down, and yet as a coach, I'm always telling my non-pros, my green reiners, my rookie reiners, look up, look up, look up. One of the simplest ways to get a rider to realign their shoulders with their hips and to get their hip rocked under is by telling them to look up, because the body is still quite connected in this case. Okay, so if I'm telling my green reiner friends who are riding like this, head tipped down a little bit, shoulders ahead of the vertical, and a little bit of anterior tilt in the pelvis, if I tell them to look up, usually this is what happens. The pelvis realigns, the shoulders come back, and the rider looks up. The horse now feels like they have space to lift their shoulders up, and everything works better. If I were to tell Dwayne Latimer to look up, he already has the independence of his seat and the independence of his body. So the only thing that would change would be his head position. And you actually see it, if you watch any of his runs, you actually see it when he comes around his corners for his run down, where his body position is correct. The hip is still rocked under, the back is still flat, the chest is still open. It's literally just the head that's doing this. And then when he goes to run down, he's lifting his head up. So all of the things that he's wanting to do to influence his horse using his body, he's already doing. It's literally just that his head, in some parts of his pattern, is peeking down. So how can we use this to relate to our own riding? The pelvis. Always going to the pelvis, always going to the seat. The seat is the most important piece. You can use the hack of looking up to help correct a lot of body position issues. And you can use this as incentive to keep correcting your hip and keep improving the independence of your body, whether you're doing that by having an instructor coach you, whether you're doing some exercises. You can do lots of exercises, all kinds of, anything that's balletic, anything with yoga, anything with Pilates, where you're building strength and you're building independence of your body parts. All of those things help when you do get onto your horse. And then I think finally, we are, as creatures, as humans, we are very hand-eye coordinated. That's the way that we are oriented. That's the way that we live our lives. That's the way that we have survived to the point that we have. That's why we have opposable thumbs, hand-eye. So anytime that we're doing something new, anytime that we're trying to figure something out, maybe anytime that we're nervous, we are going to go back to that. So we're always going to have a hard time keeping our eyes up away from whatever it is that we're doing. Even as $1 million rider, sometimes we're going to get caught looking down. So developing the independence of the rest of the body is absolutely essential as we improve and as we ask our horses to do more and more difficult things, and especially things that maybe make us a teensy bit nervous and make us go back to looking down. Okay, I hope that answers that question for you, to the people that asked. I know that that's something that comes up at weekend trainings. I know it's something that has come up at the futurity, and I hope that you're able to take some of this advice and apply it to your own riding. If you are interested in doing a deep dive, deeper than this, deep dive into how horses take direction, the progress from birth all the way to finished show horse for the horse, the progress from very green rider to very elite for the rider, and then deep diving into all of the aids and cues, how we coordinate them for the things that we ask our horses to do most often, and then finally specializing in the advanced reining maneuvers and exactly what our body needs to do and the influence that our body has on our horses. Then I would love for you to join me inside of the Equitation Accelerator, which is my new program, which launches in January. It's a 12-week program. We meet live like this. We meet live actually on Zoom instead of on Facebook, and we get to chat about all things equitation, and then you get a series of video lessons to go through that you can apply directly to your riding to improve your equitation. I'm thrilled about this program. I'm excited for all the people that have already signed up. If you have not signed up, you can check out the link that Denise has added here in the comments for us. And like I said before, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. The page that is linked here has a lot of answers to those questions, but if you have further questions, whether it's going to be right for you, don't hesitate to reach out. We do have a Futurity special that is still on, that you can save a little bit of money by enrolling early. And if you're watching this after the Futurity special is done, we'd still love to have you, and we start in January. Thanks for being here, you guys, and thanks as always for the comments and the likes and the shares. If you know somebody who looks down and you think they could benefit from a little deeper understanding about what looking down does to their horse and why it's so challenging to look up, and a little bit of inspiration about keep trying to look up and keep developing some independence of the seat and the body, then please feel free to share this with them. And I will see you guys soon. Thanks a lot.